Welcome back. For those of you who may not have met me earlier or seen my first, welcome to you. I'm Prasenjit Dwara, Director of the Asia Research Institute and colleague of Professor Chua Beng Huat, who is your founding deity of this organization, and we're very pleased to have had these exciting 3 days. And now we come to our final session, certainly the final paper and a discussion after that. And it is my very, very genuine pleasure to introduce Professor Thongchai Winichakul. Thongchai is an old friend. I remember when we first read his book, Siam Mapped Geobody of a Nation. I was teaching at the University of Chicago then, and we invited him right over to Chicago from Madison, where he started teaching, and became one of the great promoters of this book on the nation. And since then, Thongchai has also been at the Asia Research Institute from 2010 to 2012. He was the senior visiting professor there, research professor, where he certainly collaborated and participated in a very full way at our events. Since then, Thongchai has gone on to do even more important things. Most of all, he has become the president of the American Association for Asian Studies, and we are actually very lucky that it was very fortuitous that he became president, because we had just been planning that he'd become president at this time, because just before he became president, before we knew about his election, the Asia Research Institute had worked out an arrangement with the Association for Asian Studies to have a smaller version of the IACS Conference in Asia. It's called IACS in Asia, and it will be held here in NUS in 2014 July. And Thongchai will, of course, be the presiding deity of that one. Be just after his tenure, but it will be. And so all this is to say that this is a very important and a particularly wonderful homecoming for Thongchai, who, as you know, is also from this region. And I won't bore you anymore with my pratter, and go on to say that his talk is entitled simply States of Emergency. I give you Thongchai.
Thank you. Thank you, Prasenjit, and thanks for the introduction, and thanks for all the support years back. At first, when Beng Huat told me almost the last day before I left Singapore last year, I agreed to give a talk here, but then in my mind, what was it about? State of emergency. I emailed him later, I emailed Daniel, I emailed a few people, what do you want to mean? State of emergency in Malaysia? Or state of emergency as a government talk about debate between Benjamin and Schmidt, or both, or somewhere in between? Daniel, so helpful, saying whatever you think is appropriate. Anyway, this morning, the panel this morning helped a lot. I prepared something, but I'm not so sure that it's relevant, it fits, or it's out of place until I listened to the panel this morning. It fits perfectly. But the problem also, they also talked a lot of points that I prepared, so I don't have much to say. Except that I prepare maybe another case of state of emergency. This is what this morning have talked about that I can, from my note, I jotted down. We talk about state emergency as a common, more common experience in Asia than people may realize. Perhaps with some variation, of course, and maybe the variation as far as the case of India. Talk about permanent state of emergency or somewhat permanent. In other words, it becomes normalcy rather than the state of exception. Threat and state of emergency was a condition for nation building, and I add for the taking off period of industrialization in the region as well. It didn't happen under liberal democracy. It happened in many cases, in most countries, under authoritarianism. Then the post-Cold War liberalization also remained under the shadow or legacy, in some places still under the state of emergency. I add that one more line that, how about neoliberalism? Because we talk a lot about cultural studies and cultural production under the logic of neoliberalism. I add one line here, is just simply, are we sure what kind of neoliberalism we talk about? Isn't it true that neoliberalism in this region also taking place under such condition of legacies or shadow of state of emergency? So normalcy means what? Normalcy equal permanent restriction and suppression, what allow, what not allow, and how much allow, and self-censorship is common in cultural production. I add one more line, public sphere. Public sphere, we tend to think about European public sphere or public sphere as based on European experience, historical experience. Public sphere under the state of emergency definitely is different. The result, this one very much from Hyper-royalism, cultural production under fear, and I add one more word, and under self-censorship. This is what we talked this morning. So my job here, this slide, in fact, is the last slide of my preparation. So I move up because people talk already. I'm going to talk about one case. Adding to Hyper-royalism, adding to the speakers this morning of different cases, talk more about one more case. And in this case, after listening to the talk this morning, I'm pretty sure that it's not an exception. It's just a variation under the same theme, under the same similar conditions. Let me preview first what I'm going to talk about. In other words, in a way, what I'm going to talk about is like telling you the story of the emperor has no clothes. I assume that most people or everybody know these tales, right? Emperor wants a new dress. The tailor or the dressmaker create in a way, he said, the dress that nobody can see. Only people who are smart enough or good enough something. Then nobody want to admit, including King himself, want to admit that he is not smart or he's not good enough. So he said, yeah, I saw it. I see the dress, even though the dressmaker doesn't do anything. So emperor walk out nakedly into public. The whole public also say, oh, it's great, beautiful, it's great dress. Nobody ever see anything, but they have to say that. Only finally one small boy shouts, the king is naked, the emperor is naked. According to this story, it didn't say that after that what happened to the boy. In fact, that's the story of hyper-royalism in Thailand today. Let me start from this. This is the topic for a talk today. I'm going to go very brief, just let you read it. The crisis today, basically, the fundamental problem is the conflict between, this is classical policy 101, the conflict between the changing socioeconomic and emerging new classes who prefer new kind of, or new mode of political access, new mode of access to political power, in conflict with the existing political system. then the tension can go on for a while until a trigger. The trigger is the possibility of the possible trouble for royal succession. Now, one of the two factors in the major crisis right now is what I call a moment ago, royalist democracy. This is what it means. Royalist democracy, in short, is a kind of democracy, parliamentary elected democracy with the monarchies, unelected monarchies. I emphasize monarchies. I didn't use the word monarch or king. I use the word monarchies in plural term. With the monarchies on top of the normal political system, intervene, direct the personnel, control the budget to some extent, key personnel reshuffle in the army, in certain direction, in certain department in the Interior Ministry, Agricultural Ministry, and many others. Those people who are kind of, not puppeteer, but kind of has the authority to intervene informally. They're not elected, they're not accountable, but they interfere for the past 20, 30 years. This is royalist democracy. The important thing about royalist democracy is that it relies on hyper-royalism. It relies on the presence of the present king. Hyper-royalism is the public culture of royalist democracy. What are the characteristics of hyper-royalism? First, intensify presence of royalism in space and time of everyday social life in Thailand. First of all, let me say that royalism, as we saw in Thailand today, is not historically as it is. No. A lot of people in Thailand thought that it has been like this forever since hundreds of years ago. No. As I'm going to say in a moment, you can see that it built up in the 60s, and it started in the mid-1970s, not so long ago. It just happened that in the 60s, in the 70s, it means that most people around 60 or 70 years old, when they grew up, know things around, understand the world, they know only this king. They don't know anybody else. They know the monarchy whom they know, and the royalism they know is the one that they are experiencing right now. They never know before, unless they are historian or they are good at reading some historical book, which is rare because most historical book doesn't want to say this either, that pre-1960s, the king can be very unpopular. In 1920s, the king was criticized. There is a political cartoon drawing picture of another king, not the present one, of the king at the time, likened him to a lizard. In Thai, in English, the word lizard in Thai is here, which is a kind of a bastard or something like that in English right now. So it's normal. In 1930s, the king can be sued, can be charged. The things that we saw today happened only in the 60s. Well, I'm going to a bit details later. But it's a recent phenomenon, at least in our lifetime only. It became powerful, intensified since 1975. The phenomenon of what I call hyper-royalism is peculiar to the current generations only. So let's go back to what are the characteristics of the hyper-royalism. Intensified presence in space and time. In space, let me explain it by telling you a very short remark by Ben Anderson. As you know, Benedict Anderson is also a specialist from Thailand. I think he has a North American winter home in Bangkok. So he told my teacher, they're close friends, that there are only three big poster cutout posters along the two sides of the road. Is that the right word, cutout posters? Huge one. There are only three types in Bangkok. One, selling housing. Two, banks. advertised on the bank, and 3 things about royals. In terms of time, that story or that tale, just briefly, but I think it represents a lot. In Thailand, you go to most places, most houses, definitely every office, private or government, you see pictures of the king everywhere. Since mid-1970s, you don't need to read all the list. I can tell you that there have been so many huge celebration of something about the king. The following list just only for the king alone. You see? Not including the queen, the crown prince, the princess, the princesses. Second, exaltation, hyperbolic attributes to the royals, not only the king, but especially him. Almost like making them divine beings. For example, the king is known for the best at jazz. I think he joined Benny Goodman. According to Thai story, he's as good as Benny Goodman. According to Paul Hadley, the critical biography of King Bhumibol, which was banned in Thailand, he said otherwise. And he's, let's say in simple terms, he's the best in everything he touched. He got so many degrees. So many degrees, even though he doesn't finish undergrad. You might say that this is etiquette. People praise etiquette. It's possible, but I, in my opinion, I'd like to report that this is what a lot of people really believe. Not just etiquette, that maybe we kind of praise some people for etiquette, for politeness. But this is for a lot of people, they really believe that he's a kind of genius. Third, unlike many other kings or emperors in the world, he stayed since the 60s becoming semi-god until become non-human, become superhuman, or become some kind of deity. I have no time to go over details of those characteristics, but just keep this in mind. If you're not sure, you're not quite believe me, just observe. This is how people treat him, almost maybe like a deity. It's a kind of religiosity. So in a way, in Thailand, people have freedom of religion, but people do not have freedom to be non-royalist. This is an important point that I will revisit many times in this talk. The previous 3 things, intensification of royal appearance in space and time, religiosity or exaltation, are not produced by the state, are not manipulation by the state alone. Of course, state join the state is very, very key player in producing those. But the important thing is that the public involved. The public very much involved in the production, circulation, and consumption of those hyper-royalism. I put up in there. So economy of royalism is very much participatory. It's very much public. It's not just state manipulation. A few people have a grand plan and manipulate 60 million people. In my view, if we talk about hyper-royalism, almost like state manipulation, it's giving too much credit to the king again. Nobody can generate this kind of condition of almost like somebody called brainwashing. I don't like that word because I don't think people are brainwashed easily. But it's become somehow ideology, culture, widespread and deep because public involved. Public participates in all the process of the economy of royalism. Don't put all the blame to the state or to the palace. Number 5. To make sure that the above 3 or 4 characteristics is maintained or reproduced. And this is very much to the heart of the idea or theories of the state of emergency, as Schmidt, Benjamin, and Agamben explained. It's a kind of suspension of the normal. In the Asian case, it might not be normal, but suspension of the rule of law as we know, as we prefer it. Introduce a new law, another law, that override the proper rule of law. In this case, is less majesty law in Thailand is it's wrong in every way. I'm going to tell you a story of this guy. We call him known as Agong. Agong is Chinese word turned to Thai. Is grandpa. He has his real name, but to make it simple, called Agong. He was charged for lese majesty. Lese majesty is criminal law, Criminal Code Article 112. So if you read some news, you know it by Article 112. Somebody called lese majesty, exchangeable. He was charged for lese majesty violation because he sent 4 text messages, 4 short text messages, very damaging about the Queen. In court, the judge refused to give him bail. Most of people charged with that lese majesty refused bail because lese majesty law is part of the criminal code in the section for security, which is created under state of emergency. Even Thailand is not under state of emergency anymore. 112 still in that section. So it's not normal defamation case. It's special defamation. It's as serious as rebellion, as serious as killing police or killing authority of the state. Even though in this case, the short words, not even the full sentence, and sent from a phone which is a kind of old-fashioned. That's why he has to break it down to 4 times. It's so damaging. But as it turned out, okay, first he was denied bail. Secondly, he doesn't know how to use cell phone. The judge didn't listen. The burden of proof belongs to him instead of prosecutor. He assumed guilt until he proved innocent. So his burden, he has to prove that he didn't know how to use a phone. Then the judge said he can pretend not ever using it. He didn't have the phone because he sent it for repair. In fact, that's a possibility somebody in the repair shop did that. He has to prove that he sent the phone to the repair shop. The proof he sent, the judge didn't believe. In the end, after interrogation, all kind of things, it was not enough to prove that he sent the text. The prosecutor failed. The judge himself override the prosecutor, saying literally something like this. Even though the prosecutor failed to prove that Agong sent the text messages, the judge knows the internal intent. Plus circumstantial evidence pointed to his intent. 4 messages, 5 years per messages. Only a few months after the verdict come down, he died in jail. This is state of emergency. Right now, there are about a few dozen people in jail for 112. The number increased in recent years because of political crisis that we have no time to turn to, but I'm going to touch on that in a little. Okay, back to our story, but our issue. Why hyper-royalism? I'm going to show you the history of hyper-royalism, brief history, but I'm going to put into groups the reason or the reason why hyper-royalism was promoted or was generated. On the one hand, it involved royalist political agenda of some kind, for example, and the main one, very important example, to regain royal hegemony over political system after they lost in the 1932 revolution. They tried to regain that. And second, because of fear and anxiety over the future of the monarchy, which of course, in the view of the monarchists, it means the future of the country. Pre-1976, from 1932 to 1976, the country was under the regime of the revolutionary who overthrew the absolute monarchy. The monarchy tried to fight back. In Thai history book would say this is a peaceful revolution. It's not peaceful. On the day of revolution, on 24th of May 1932, it was peaceful, no fighting, and nobody died. But about 15 years after that, especially the first 5 years, is bloody, including a civil war in 1933. So it just didn't happen on that day, but it happened for years after that. A lot of fighting. The monarchy tried to fight back to regain power, but in the end they failed. Until the end of World War II, the revolutionary regime, unfortunately, took the side of the Japanese during World War II, so they lost, and the royalists came back. Royalists really came back in 1947 by alliance with the army, stage a coup, and get rid of the last group of revolutionary people who remained in power. Since then, the end of the revolutionaries and the return of the royalists. Even though the royalists still up and down for about 10 years. The agenda at the time, pre-1976, to try to revive hegemony, not to revive absolute monarchy, no, to be fair to them, but to revive somehow hegemony over political system. Fear and anxiety is against the revolutionary because the conflict should go on. It's a long conflict than people realize. And including the death of the previous king before the present one, that create uncertainty for a while. The important period for hyper-royalism is the Cold War. The royalists really came back by 1960s. The condition is perfect. The pro-monarchist military dictatorship took over in 1958. Second, the presence of a young and charming king who vowed to serve the people. King Bhumibol, the present king, was charismatic, no doubt, no argument. Suppose not King Bhumibol, somebody else, not as charismatic, or perhaps die younger. Perhaps hyper-royalism wouldn't have been alive, wouldn't have been active until now. But historical conditions just happened to be perfect. He came, his charisma, and also he lived so long. And the third factor is a strong U.S. endorsement for royalism as the best anti-communist weapon. Kennedy Doctrine in 1962 was followed by the State Department deliberate plan for Thailand, for counterinsurgency in Thailand, to use or to ask or to request the royal family to take the lead. This is historical fact, historical document in the U.S. We can find it there already. It's open. Since then, the royals got support, all kind of moral, political, financial, both from the government and from the U.S. directly. Support the activities, create all kind of activities of the king and the queen to go out to many places, to visit people, to create projects, to do many things that I'm going to mention in a moment. So this is the 60s is a time when, if we have a graph, it's goes up until 1973. 1973 popular uprising has been known to people who know Thai history as a beginning of popular democracy. Is true. I would add that it was also the turning point for the royalist democracy. You might say it's contradictory. That's normal for history. History full of contradiction, full of paradox. This is one of them. 1973, beginning of popular democracy, is also a turning point when royalists regain their upper hand over the political system. Then, after 1973, keep in mind what happened in 1975, Indochina Revolution. After 1973, student movement, after the military gone, was ousted, turned radical. In 1975, with the Indochina Revolution, people talk about next domino is Thailand. Suppose you asked you, I know that you never make this pretension, asked you to be the royals, what would you think? Suddenly, surrounding the country is communist. Suddenly, just you open the front door, you see the radical students yell, shouted, campaign, a lot of things, singing revolutionary song in Bangkok. I argue that that's the moment when hyper-royalism marked the beginning. That's the moment when intensified mass movement, right-wing mass movement, started seriously. A year and a half later, radical students were suppressed. Hyper-royalism goes on. In the mid-80s, it goes on to re-establish royalist democracy, which finally succeeded in terms of getting the upper hand over the military in 1992. At the same time, look on the other side, the fear and anxiety. They faced a serious fear and anxiety in 1997 with the economic crisis. Economic nationalism rose briefly, but the sense among the royalists, to a bit more hostile against the U.S. imperialism, against global capitalism increased after 1997. Let's say the mass movement of the royalists. Yes, royalists also have movement. Until now, they are anti-capitalism. In 2001 to 2004, I did another project not related to this. I interviewed a former right-wing who killed students in 1976. I went to talk to many of them. One thing is so amazing, it's not relevant to my project, but it's amazing, is that all of them, I asked one question, I asked all of them. Who is the most important, who is number one enemy in your view right now? Right now, I mean 2000 to 2004. All of them unanimous, U.S. imperialism. And one of them said they should have listened to me in 1970s when we yell anti-U.S. imperialism, right? They support the U.S. bases in Thailand. By 2000, those royalist mass movement are anti-U.S. So hyper-royalism has been going on since the 60s and marked the beginning in 75 until now for different agenda, different related agenda and fear and anxiety. Now, how it has been promoted, how it has been increased, how it has grown. It has grown so much. I'm going to go briefly, number 2, so briefly because I think I'm going to talk a little bit more for number 3. The answer is that for modern monarchy to re-establish itself, it has to combine at least 2 elements, maybe more than this, but I emphasize these 2. One, it has to be sacred. Two, it has to be popular monarchy. No more the monarch who stay inside the palace. People don't know much. No more. It's a time for modern monarchy. It's a time for people to see them, to see him, to see them, and to enjoy, at least have the ability, have the opportunity to participate in royal activities, some form. At least to see, at least to consume by watching. Perhaps more than that, can participate in donation, in all kinds of things. But given all of that, keep the sacredness. The moment that I like to show you, this is the moment of the coronation in 1950. On the one hand, this king went through normal ritual. The ritual is Hindu-Buddhist, modified a bit in the mid-19th century to make it more modern a little bit. But basically, it's a ritual that have been handed down since Ayutthaya, at least since about 14th century. The essence of the ritual is to turn the person, to convert or to turn the person into reincarnated being from Hindu god. The ritual is pretty much Hindu than Buddhist. It's modified in mid-19th century to make it more Buddhist. But essentially, it's Hindu ritual to make him reincarnation of God. This done by the court, within the court compound. In all previous coronation, the king went through that process, turned himself or was turned into reincarnation. That's it, full stop. Only king, the current king, after that ritual, he came out into the street where people can observe, where people can participate, and end up that day with the public address. This is the first king who include that address in the same day of the coronation ritual. At the public address in that picture, not in this picture, sorry, I put from another, I copied from the internet. He made a very short speech. He said a few things and it includes this sentence, which become a kind of spell, become a mantra, reproduced so many times until today, from 1950 until today. I shall reign by Dharma for the benefit and happiness of all Siamese people. As a matter of fact, the official translation is, I shall rule the land. I think if he did intend to mean rule the land, it's interesting because by 1950 it was not absolute monarchy anymore. He doesn't rule the land. So, give the benefit of doubt, maybe the official translation is not quite correct. Reign is vague, it's more ambiguous. It goes both ways. To make it short, the spells, the discourse that make him democratic, Dhamaraja. Dhamaraja translation is righteous king. You can see the compound word, Raja king. Dhamma is Dhamma, as in Buddhist, the Hindu word Dhamma. But has to be democratic Dhamaraja. Has to be neo-Dhamaraja. Has to be modern version of the long age-old Hindu-Buddhist concept. Among them include the concept that he is a great elected by people. Automatically elected because he's highest merit. I'm not going to go in detail how he got elected. No, not ballot, no way. But in Buddhist concept, he became the king because he was elected automatically by the result of his virtue, the result of his merit. Let's say if he has not enough merit, he wouldn't have been chosen to be the king. So in a way, it's a kind of tautologic. You become the king because you have married. How do you know you have married? Because you become the king. Something along that line. But more importantly, scholars since 1960s kind of drum up the ideas of the royalists since 1930s and 40s, who argue against the revolutionaries that the monarchy did not obstruct democracy. The monarch, the previous monarch, planned to give democracy to people already. But the revolutionaries jumped the gun. The revolutionaries disrupt the process. So, as it turned out, since 60s, especially in the 73 uprising, that popular uprising, march along the street, have picture of the king in front, and have one of the quotation from the previous king who was ousted by revolutionary when he wrote that he is ready, he is prepared to give democracy. That is the leading model of the popular uprising 1973. Plus other things, the discourse that make the monarchy, even though he's above politics. In fact, the discourse around the time since 1970 is always about politics. Now, magic. This is a quote. There is an article in 1946, before the present king came to the throne. The article was written by one of the royalist ideologues, who happened to be the personal tutor of the young king. He gave a speech to the Science Society in English. Keep in mind that this king and his brother, their early ages, they spent most of the time in Switzerland. Their lingua franca were not Thai. So that ideologue gave a speech in English. The article or the speech is all about traditions, how the king needs to care people, these traditions from Sukhothai, blah, 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 the discourse of Neo-Dhammarasha that I mentioned earlier. But he started the article, that ideologue, started the article by quoting Malinowski. And the article emphasized we need to keep sacredness. Now, my argument is that modern monarchy must be seen in public and produces majestic spectacle. Modern monarchy is visual effects. And public participation very much involved and important to the economy of this magic. For example, this is lessons from King Chulalongkorn in the first decade of 20th century. He built a new street, a huge avenue when there was no car. In the historical documents, the purpose is for the royals, not just him, royals, for leisurely stroll, a carriage. And the second purpose, nice to be seen. A huge avenue which is nice to be seen, nice to be watched. It's similar to the book Fujitani, remember? Splendid Monarchy for Emperor Meiji. Now, another thing about visual effects of royalty is this. Keep in mind that in 1960s, it's the rise of TV culture everywhere. I argue, no, of course, I have to prove I can only find a correlation here and then have to prove the effect is so hard to prove. But I believe that hyper-royalism, the rise of royalism until become hyper-royalism until today, perhaps the end of the TV is coming, but let's say up to today at least, is very much the effects of television. TV is one way, right? TV is one-way communication. TV make things look so real. TV make things real. Another thing is a pageantry. Along the long list I showed you earlier, each one of them involve year-long celebration by all quality society, usually climax in certain kind of celebration or pageantry, like a barge, like this one. TV show these pictures all the time, by the way. Since the beginning of TV program in Thailand it started in late 1950, 57 or 58, I can't remember, let's say, but the program, regular program daily started in 1961, only a few hours. But since 1961 until today, there is only one program which maintained the same. I mean, there are all kinds of drama, other things come and go, right? Only one thing remained the same, news. News in the early years from 61 until mid-70s may or may not have news about royal family. But if I ask you to guess, what is the year when the news changed? To become a strict order, at 8 o'clock at night, will become news about the king, queen, crown prince, princess, if the mother survived, the king's mother, and then to the younger royals. Strict order, every day. It started in 1976. Just imagine, I can't prove more than this. You know this news. You saw this news day in, days out. Some people argue that, it's boring, people don't see it anymore. What happened? Why do you need to see it when you know the story already? You don't need to see it. You know it's real. You know it's true. Until to the point that you don't need to watch it every day anymore. Think about it. Culture production in Thailand started seriously under the Cold War, under the military rules. We no longer have state of emergency, but the legacies of the shadow is still there. Cultural production for a huge part, I don't know how much, is a production about royalism, is hyper-royalism. For people who disagree or for people who think otherwise, it means fear. Fear for repercussion if you are critical. For people who are royalists, fear for public disorder because of the first group of people. Self-censorship was abound, out of fear or out of concern for order. Self-censorship, mostly self-imposed. The police rarely come down to tell you to do this, to do that. Why self-imposed? Typically because people you are afraid of are not the police, but people around you. They are not Stasi informants. They are not 1984 agent of the state who can watch you, the big brother who can watch you anywhere. But they are fellow citizens who can take action before the police arrive. It did happen. People take action. For example, one young guy refused to stand up in Thailand, before the movie starts. There's royal anthem, you have to stand up. That young guy, there's no law for that, but it becomes a practice. That young guy refused to stand up. People in the theater throw things at him. It turns out he filed a charge to the police for assault. he was arrested. Those people who assaulted him got free because they did that out of loyalty. This is a subject that I have no time and, in fact, no ability to explore. I just throw out the question, throw out the issue that this is something we need to think. Culture industry, under state of emergency, what it looks like in the Thai case under hyper-royalism, with fear, with self-censorship, how it looks like. It doesn't mean suppressed in so much. I mean, so strongly in every movement or every action of cultural production. No, but it looks like there are certain kind of limit, or we might say a certain tier. Up to a certain point, you are free to do things, especially pop culture. Up to a certain point, it's another story. How do we know where the line is? And I guess I'm quite confident the line is not the same either. The line is not straight line, not homogeneous. So how do we know the line? Maybe we should study the line under state of emergency. But keep in mind that magic is illusion, right? There are two meanings of magic. One is a kind of innate ability, power. The other one, that the guy or the person who plays tricks on you, that's also magic. There is illusion, there is disillusion. What happened is after the coup in 2006, with the fact now established that the royalists, including the king himself, was behind the coup. Lots of people disillusioned. The critics of monarchy right now is different from all the previous critics of the monarchy on two counts. One, all previous critics of the monarchy subscribe to certain ideology. Marxism, Sun Yat-sen republicanism, Maoism, love French Revolution, something along the line, all of those. The critics or I don't want to put them the anti-royalists because I don't really know. I know that they question royalism that they have known for all their life. So I call them critics. The critics of the monarchy this time, they are all reactions to hyper-royalism. They didn't subscribe to any particular ideology, which means so much variety. The one thing in common, just they question hyper-royalism. Second difference is that the number. All previous critics of monarchy are small. This time, I really don't know. Among the majority people who still elect Thaksin's related party to power, I'm pretty sure that not all of them, but how many, what percentage of people in that millions, in that 60 million, are disillusioned? It's hard to tell. I'm going to go through slides and end now. But violent suppression in the name of monarchy is also mass culture. This one I took it from Ari Harianto. I like to give him credit. After yesterday he talked about a video called The Act of Killing. Mass killing happened from time to time in Thailand too, at least twice in the past 20, 30 years in the name of the monarchy. The last time in 2010. And both times the mass participated in the killing too. Yesterday, Ariel showed the video, showed the documentary. People don't seem to be. People sensibility of killing is different from us. This one, killing must be public. Spectacle preferred. Ariel said that murder is an acting is a murder. I like to point to you. Maybe the picture is not close, not good enough. Only this one. See the young boy smiling. I like to end by saying the emperor has no clothes is not a fable. It's real. Under the state of emergency during the Cold War, cultural production, which has been dominated Thailand, is hyper-royalism. So, yes, I agree very much with people. Many people talked this morning that under state of emergency is productive. Productive of what? Depends on your political stance. In this case, spells and fear are far beyond social etiquette. Because one who sees a king naked cannot say it. They have to self-censor. Otherwise, they're put in jail. The result to intellectual community or intellectual society, including the cultural producer, is self-deception and self-denial. For example, deny that the succession crisis is looming. Thank you very much.